Hey everybody, welcome to Monarch Academy. Today I want to talk with you about the types of evidence that you may be asked to collect, and I'm going to give you a graphic organizer that can help you visually represent all of that information to keep it straight for you, and for when you're discussing and writing, you can easily access it. All right, so what's important about a graphic organizer? One, it can help you take larger chunks of information and pick out what matters and have a place to store it. And you can see the one that I'm about to show you is broken up into 4 different boxes. So you may not use all 4 according to the type of article, text, or novel, or poem, or whatever it may have in there. But this would be one that you would want to save in your Google Doc because you can use it for literature and for informational text. So let's get started. We're going to also use our strategy, Google for Good, today. So get ready to kind of incorporating our graphic organizer, our lesson with Google for Good. Okay. So now that I've told you how all this is going to work, and I really want you to start using graphic organizers, it actually decreases your cognitive load too. You can look at that, but it allows you to take away some of that extraneous stuff that's happening and really zero in on what's important. You get a narrow focus. So this is the actual graphic organizer that you have access to at monarcheducationalservices.com. You have access to all of the worksheets. They're printable. You can also make copies and add them to your Google Drive and put them into folders that make sense to you. But this one is important because no matter what class you've got, no matter what text, this one can help you along the way to organize information. So I would suggest that you keep this chart for an entire unit or an entire book. It's according to how you want to work this. So, for example, we're going to look at the Impossible Girl to work through this as an example today, as a model. And I want for you to know that you could take under direct quotes, when you get down underneath here, you could put chapter 1. If there is a quote, like you want to be an evidence collector of quotes that matter. 1 to 2 quotes per chapter that really sum up some kind of impactful moment for the character, an event. You can definitely do that there. You also have another evidence collector that doesn't have the 4 boxes. It just has your straight across boxes that you might like that type of organization better. So check out the evidence collector. See which one that you like, which one you feel the most comfortable with. This one can really help you when you're working with informational text and your text sets too. So I do want you to practice using this one and see which one you like. All right, so for literature, the top 2, in my opinion, are going to be the ones that you're going to use. However, you might come up with an idea from something that you've read, and you might want to look up numbers or statistics. You might want to kind of see how does that relate in our society, in our world. And then you may put those types of questions there and go out and pull in research. Okay, so let's practice. Here's your standards, cite textual evidence. And I will let you know if you want to see, even in 6th grade, that is your number 1. So standard 1, regardless if you're in 6th through 12th grade, it's going to ask you to cite textual evidence. So there we go. So there's a reason. It's important that you learn how to do this skill. First, you got to be able to collect the evidence. So let's say you're looking for a direct quote. What does that mean? That means that you're going to take something straight out of here and you're going to put quotation marks on here. And you can say, for example, you're going to cite our author, Ashley White, and you're going to say, White stated, and then I'm going to look for one. Her flying wasn't as smooth as the Griffins, but it wasn't terrible either. This shows that Ava may have some innate skill that she was born with And she's not just absolutely terrible at anything that comes within this fantasy world, within her capabilities, that she's pretty okay. Just imagine what it would be like if she could learn and hone in on those skills. So if you were going to directly quote that and then give your explanation, you would actually put in quotation marks, her flying wasn't as smooth as the Griffin's, but it wasn't terrible either. And that's what you've put inside. And then you can explain what that does show about Ava's character. If your teacher asked you to look for something about her character, because when a teacher is asking you to cite evidence, it's usually coming with something else. They don't just give you like, oh, just cite evidence you like. It's like cite evidence that supports the theme. Cite evidence that supports how an author uses language, or how an author builds the plot over time, or how the setting, or they're going to give you a specific prompt. So then when you find your evidence, make sure that it matches that prompt, okay? But also make sure that you are citing it appropriately. So then you will give credit to the author, then you will put it in quotations, and no, you don't get to change it up. You have to type it exactly the way, or write it exactly the way that the author has stated it, because you are doing a direct quote. So let's move over to paraphrased quotes. And I'm going to give you a trick on how to do this one. So I love a strategy called Google for Good, and you're going to hear me talk about it a lot in our Monarch lessons. And that means that you already have tabs ready, and you're going to use Google for Good. So as you can see, hopefully with me sharing my screen, I already have the Merriam-Webster dictionary. I already have thesaurus.com. Those are two of my favorite Google for Good resources, and I always have them open in a Google tab ready to go when it's time for my lessons. So you're going to see me model that. So let's say your teacher has asked you to collect evidence, but you don't want to directly quote it because you've already used that. And you want to vary up the way that you express yourself, and you want to paraphrase. Let's say it's a big chunk and you can't cite 4 or 5 sentences, and you need to smash them all together with one impactful, powerful idea that can help get whatever it is across that you're trying to prove. So that's a great opportunity for you to paraphrase, to put it in your own words. All right, so I have found us a spot. Okay, I'm going to read it. You ready? There's a lot here, but I'm going to not read all of it because I don't want to give spoiler alerts here. So I'm just going to read, I'm going to count my sentences. 1, 2, 3 sentences, okay? We don't want to quote all of those, so we're going to paraphrase. Ava nodded and tried to take in the headmistress's words. It was easy to feel empowered in her presence. It was easy to feel as if what she'd spoken was as easy as turning on a light switch. All right, so I've read that. Now we're going to paraphrase this. So now we're going to say the way that Ashley White, so the way that White has established Ava's relationship with the headmistress at this point, that you can understand that she feels empowered. So what does that word empowered mean, and how can you paraphrase empowered? Let's say you get stuck and you just need something in your word bank to kind of help you push through that, okay? What you do is you go to Merriam-Webster and you type in empowered. All right, so we know it's an adjective. Okay, let's see. Oh, you can save the word. Ooh. Having the knowledge, confidence means our ability to do things or make decisions for oneself. So now we know that Ava is more confident in her abilities after being in the headmistress's presence, after being around her, after listening or hearing her or asking or receiving advice. And so now when we are paraphrasing, we can look at these words, and I like that word confidence. if I want to try a different technique, I can go to Empowered on thesaurus.com. And I can look and see, what does it mean maybe to be empowered? She feels special. She feels qualified. Well, out of all of these words, and I always start with Merriam-Webster, I like the word confidence the best. So there we go back. You're the author, right? So when you're paraphrasing, you have to determine your own word choice, which is actually a standard, which is standard number 4, regardless of what grade you're in, 6 through 12. How does an author use words to convey meaning as it like contributes to tone or as your standards progress? So how would I portray the word empowered and use my author autonomy, my choice, which word works best for me, for my paraphrase? And I'm going to go with confidence. So when you come back over to your paraphrased quote, then you could talk about how Ava's confidence built when she was around the headmistress, whether it was listening to her give a speech or when she was receiving direct advice, period. And that shows that kind of relationship and how the people that you are around really do matter, because we do want people around us that can pour light and life into us. So this is a relationship as a part of this book that you can highlight that and talk about why that piece of evidence matters ultimately to Ava. How does it impact Ava, and how does it give her the courage and the confidence and to go out and work on her own abilities? So there you go. That's how you can paraphrase. Now you saw how I used Google for Good. I went straight to Merriam-Webster. You see that? I went straight to thesaurus. And then I did my standard number 4, which was to be able to choose the best word to convey meaning. That's what I did. I chose confidence. But when you're paraphrasing, you're putting it into your own words. So sometimes I might need that word bank to kind of help generate an idea. And all I needed was that big word, empowered. And what I mean by big word, I don't mean that it was like the longest word in the sentence. I mean the word that really mattered the most in that sentence. If she felt empowered, or if she felt curious, or if she felt emboldened, whatever the word was, I would need to paraphrase that word, because when I'm quoting it again, I don't want to just say Ava was empowered. I could have just direct quoted, right? If I'm paraphrasing, I'm rewording it. And the dictionary and thesaurus can help you with the word bank. It'll also help you build your vocabulary. So then the next time that you're talking about Ava, you can talk about lack of confidence versus confidence, being self-assured. You can start building a lot of these words so you can be able to talk about character traits across novels. And once you learn these skills in one book, that means you can pick up the next book and the next book, and you will be able to transfer these skills, whether it's how do you direct quote or how do you paraphrase. Now, there are other types of evidence, and I want to talk about numbers and statistics, because this is a part of our rhetorical device, really, because some people really like to receive knowledge that's that logos piece, that logic. They go straight to numbers. They want to see the bottom line. They want to see the impact in numerical terms. How does that impact? How is that influence? And so when you're reading informational text, you will often find a statistic. It's important to note when you see that, and I would highlight that. Even if you don't pull it out and put it on your chart because maybe it's not as timely or relevant, or maybe there's something else in that article that really does support that focus and claim that you're asked to narrow in and look for, I would still make sure that you pay attention when you see the numbers, when you see the statistics, because the author is putting that in there for those audience members, your audience, who likes to have that logos activated, that logic in their brain. So look for statistics in books. Now, most times you won't find that. However, I will say Kara employs that technique as an author and word choice, and she does have a statistic in here. So I will say that that can happen. I'm not saying it won't, because we've got books right here beside me that do in Monarch collections. But this really can help you when you are reading informational text. The same way with anecdotal. So oftentimes in informational text, you may have someone that expresses their ideas. They tell it in maybe a story or a narrative format, and they're making connections. You can actually quote those things, their evidence. You can pull them out if they are impactful and they add a deeper layer of when you're analyzing the text, or when you're trying to showcase something as a springboard from their idea to your ideas or your perspective. So you can use anecdotal notes. So you can find those oftentimes now in informational text, because as we can see, there are many authors out there who go to that pathos, that they go to that heartstring, and they do want to tell a little story. Because whether it's fiction, which is, our books here that we publish at Monarch, or if it's nonfiction, we are all storytellers at heart. And we also have to be aware of our audience. So our audience might like to know those little anecdotal things that are popped in there, those little stories that they want to tell, something inspiring, something insightful, something like a words of wisdom or an experience learned or a lesson learned. So you could quote that. That is an often used type of evidence, and you will see it even pop up nonfiction, because your audience member might have that pathway to their heart, and that's what activates them. Remember, we talked about logos for numbers and statistics. Now we've talked about the pathos. We've talked about how it could come to our path through our heart, and that pathway can then open up that person to be more accessible, open-minded to receiving the claim or the message that the author is trying to convey. So regardless of the type of evidence that you're pulling, when it's informational text, you always need your ethos there, which is your credibility. Can you trust the site? Can you trust the resource? Is it timely? Is it relatable? But is it current? And is it truthful? Is it substantiated? Is it backed up? Is it peer reviewed? You keep asking those kinds of questions, because you do have to be cautious when you are reviewing research or online articles, because you have to be open-minded and ask yourself, is this credible? Is this reliable? And if there are limitations to the study, you'll often be able to find those in that limitation box that they'll have in research articles. But oftentimes, if you find things on a blog, it's like more anecdotal. Could have some statistics. Well, usually they'll cite their sources, but let's say they don't cite their sources and you have found it on a really great website, but there's no citations, and they have given you numbers and statistics. Guess what you can do? You can go out, you can fact check it, you can double check it, because as we know, over time, research is added to, the wealth of knowledge continues to expand. So just be mindful of that. I wanted to bring that up, that when you are collecting evidence, make sure that you cite appropriately. You can use sentence frames to help you do that, but you're also looking for credible pieces, because you want your argument, your claim, your answer, you want that answer to be as strong as it can be, which then backs up to what evidence did you get? Now, out of all 4 types of the evidence, I will say it is the easiest to direct quote. So I would encourage you that when you're starting out, go ahead and quote. Linaburg states, Linaburg writes, and then put it in those quotation marks and go with that. And then that gives you that freedom to be able to really analyze and explain in that next sentence. Well, you picked out a direct quote. Why does it matter? Why did you pick that one? If you find a paragraph or a page or a scene and you want to just shrink it up, put it all together and give it that paraphrased quote, you still have to say Linaburg states or in chapter 8. You're still giving reference back to where you found it, but you don't put it in quotation marks. You're just paraphrasing it. You're putting it into your own words and you're clearly expressing that idea. So you don't want to muffle you don't want to muffle it up. You don't want to take and just cloud it. You want to be clear and explicit when you are expressing a paraphrased quote. You want to get as close to the original too, because you don't want to start putting in a lot of different words that have different meaning, connotation, then you're skewing that information. So be careful when you're paraphrasing. Just make sure you get it close, that you change it around, put it in your own words, but you're still staying true to the original source, okay? Then that third one, the numbers and statistics, they're really easy to spot. You'll be able to see them. You'll be able to look at the charts. If you've been given informational text and it has a graphic on it, don't skip that. It's really important to review it and to see why the author chose to include it, because there is a reason. It's not just because they wanted to fill up their space. It's because to them, that piece of evidence, whether it was a graph or a chart, had some type of meaning or value to them, and they felt that that helped to advance their claim. So pay attention to that work. Even if you're not pulling it out and addressing it, it's still important that you note when you see it, because that is a type of evidence. And the same way with anecdotal, when you see narrative, when you see story, when you see personal twist and experience there, understand why an author is doing that. Because they're hitting that audience member that likes that kind of connection. You might be the numbers person. You might like to see the statistics, and that's what you're looking for. There's other people that like to hear the story behind the numbers. So that's why anecdotal can often now be found in nonfiction work. So it's a variety of ways that you can cite and pull and collect evidence. Just make sure you're doing it, that it is timely, that it is relevant, that it is credible, and that you do it appropriately. All right, guys, I hope that y'all have a wonderful day. This graphic organizer can help you when you're pulling those types of evidence. That way at the end, here you got it. You've got your article or you've got your novel beside you. You've got your quotes. You've got it where it's cited right here in the box. You're not just going to you're going to put like on page 61. And you're going to put that quote there. I'm starting to read the book. I need to put the book down. Okay, I love all of our Monarch books. Study terminal. Yes, thank you. So when you're direct quoting and you are collecting your evidence on the evidence collector graphic organizers, please do yourself a favor. Put the page number, where you got it from, put the author down, go ahead and build your frame out. Because then when it's time for you to discuss or it's time for you to write, you pull this sheet up and you're pretty much copying and pasting at that point. So this is, you're working smarter as you go. So you're not working harder at the end. So this sheet will build over time. So make some copies of this, guys. These are the 4 types of evidence that you're most often going to find. And then if somehow you found some new ones and you're like, oh, Jen missed some, you know what? Come right here, guess what you can do? You can insert yourself a row and make yourself another part of the chart, because we're always learning and we're always growing, and you may start to notice new things and new patterns. You may want to collect that evidence too. All right, guys. Hope y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.